And at this time, the candidates will introduce themselves.
Want to go first, Fred?
Go ahead, Taylor.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Ritz. I grew up in Brunswick. I attended Glenn Academy. I graduated when I was 17, went to college at UGA, got a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture, and graduated from there when I was 20. I was a zookeeper for several years, and then I moved back to Brunswick, where I was asked to be a teacher at Glenn Academy for a year. I taught English. I don't have an English degree or a teaching degree, but I made it work. Then I'm also the assistant coach for the Glenn Academy girls soccer team. I also coach under 10 youth soccer girls over on Jekyll. I am also the secretary for the Glenn County Democratic Committee and part of the executive board. And that's me.
Fred.
Hi there, folks. My name is Fred Griffith, and I am a native of this area. I grew up on Jekyll Island. My family came here in 1968. I graduated from Glenn Academy in 1970. My mother was a teacher at Glenn Academy, art teacher. Some of you may have had her in art. My father was the registrar and dean of admissions at what was formerly known as Brunswick Junior College. After I graduated from Glenn Academy, I had an appointment to the United States Naval Academy. I attended the Naval Academy in the class of 74. I got out of the Navy in 1976 and started my own business. Got married, started a family. Both of those children are grown, and both went to Glenn Academy as well. And I have started a second family, and my wife is a native of St. Simon's Island, and we have a 12-year-old daughter who is attending or has been attending Glenn Middle School. I have several degrees, none of which I'm sure you want to hear about, but the last one that I got was in country club management, and I managed country clubs for about 15 years throughout the South. I semi-retired in 1999 and came back to this area to help with my ailing parents, who eventually passed away in 2004 and 2005. Met the love of my life. We got married. We've got a daughter now, and I started a internet business, a tour guide business, and a marketing business here, all on the concept that I would work very little and make lots of money. Unfortunately, I've done exactly the opposite. I've not made a whole lot of money, and I'm working a lot more than I ever thought I would. But I really do enjoy what I do, and I'm looking forward to not only this forum, but also hopefully running as a candidate against those dirty Republicans in November. Thank you.
Thank you both for those introductions. Both of these candidates will be running against each other for the Democratic nomination for this position. The election will take place on June 9th with early voting beginning on May 18th. Please make sure you are registered to vote and submit your absentee ballot application immediately. Now we will start with our questions. We will begin with Fred on this question and then follow with Taylor. How would you handle the current COVID-19 crisis as a county commissioner?
Well, I think it's been a very difficult crisis for the county commission to manage, primarily because they did not have much of a readiness program for a pending or even a pandemic. What they did, I was not totally opposed to. I thought they by implementing social distancing and closing the beaches, they started on the right path. I, for one, would have been a lot more cautious in how our borders were managed from I-95, all of our different exits, as well as all the different roads that come into the county, besides the interstates and the U.S. highways. So had we been a little bit more forthright in managing that, I think we might not have the 40 plus cases of coronavirus in our community today. But having said that, I think it's been a very fluid crisis, and I think the county commissioners have done as well as even if I was on the commission to relieve the Glynn Countyans that they knew what was going on a statewide basis as well as a national basis. And I applaud Chairman Browning for having written a letter to the governor about his override. It wasn't so much about the override as it was the state's lack of communication with the local representatives. So having said that, there's not a whole lot I could see that has been done that hasn't been done already that I might have done differently. Thank you.
My turn?
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of how I would handle the COVID-19 crisis as a county commissioner, I watched the meeting when they were trying to decide what to do about the pandemic. And I was kind of surprised that there was no testimonial from a medical professional. Personally, I think that they should be following the advice of medical professionals. We have the CDC here in Georgia, we have the World Health Organization, and we have our local coastal health district. And so who knows how better to handle a pandemic than medical professionals. So instead of trying to make decisions off of how they felt things were going, I wish that they had better consulted the medical professionals that we have available to us, instead of just going with kind of your gut feeling. While I really understand the plight of small businesses right now in our county, and how our economy is right now, our economy can be resurrected, and the lives that we potentially could have lost could not. So I would definitely rather have taken an overabundance of caution. And I do understand that this is a difficult situation, and it was fluid, as Fred said. And so I thought that they did a decent job, but I do wish they would have consulted with those medical professionals a little bit more. Thanks.
Okay. Now the next question. Taylor, this is for you. Do you see transparency as an important part of holding this position? If so, what would you do to make the actions of the county commission more visible and accessible to the public?
Do I think transparency is an important part of this position? Absolutely. As I've gotten more familiar with our county commission, I've realized that some people don't even know the names of their commissioners or which commissioner represents their district. And I think that the commissioners need to do a better job of reaching out to the communities that they're supposed to represent, making themselves available, so that when people have an issue, they know who to go to and how to contact them. For example, we have community members who are angry about SPLOST projects that are being implemented right now. And a lot of them, people don't realize that those SPLOST projects were voted on in 2016. And I can only attribute that to a lack of transparency, and we need to be more proactive about disseminating information that the county commission about what they're doing, and simplifying that information so that it's more easily accessible. One idea I've had is to create almost a blog on the county commission page that updates after each meeting and has more than just the meeting minutes on it, but a simplified account of what's transpired, and also allowing public comments on that blog, and then also reading the comments so that the community feels like they are involved in the meetings and the process, even if they can't go to the meetings in person.
Thank you, Taylor. And Fred, the same question for you.
Actually, I agree a lot with what Taylor has brought forward. The question of transparency is would have me elect to have more public forums in between the meetings, or at least on a quarterly basis by all the commissioners. There are, in my journey through this campaign, I have talked to people that don't even understand what an at-large post means, or that everyone in the county can vote for the at-large post, as opposed to being restricted to voting for their respective district representative. And Taylor's right. I think there are a lot of issues on the table that don't get either enough press or enough information guidance on what the particular issues are. I started reading the minutes from previous meetings, and that gave me so much insight into things that I wasn't even sure existed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Our next question goes to Fred first. Considering the huge scope of environmental concerns we are facing as a county, what will be your role as a county commissioner?
Well, we do live in a very delicate balance with our environment here. We are in a very unique situation in that we have barrier islands that are, by their definition, are a protective barrier against the mainland. I, as a commissioner, would ensure that I and my fellow commissioners understood how planning and building on not only our barrier islands, but on the mainland, what impact it is having on the marshes, the beaches around this building. What is that infrastructure? How is it impacting the environmental concerns? For instance, the former Hercules plant, Panovis, is recently had hearings about groundwater running up under Highway 17. These are important issues that need to be more highly addressed, because we can have a substantial positive impact on our environment if we take a little stronger stance. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Taylor, the same question.
Trying to fit all the environmental issues that are important for our county into 90 seconds is a bit of a challenge, but I'm going to talk about hazardous waste sites, climate change, and offshore drilling. In terms of hazardous sites in Glynn County, we have 4 Superfund sites, we have 4 polluting industries, and we have 17 other hazardous sites, according to the Glynn Environmental Coalition. So I think as county commissioners, we need to work with organizations like the Glynn Environmental Coalition and 100 Miles to monitor these hazardous sites and make necessary improvements so that everyone can have access to clean water, air, and soil, regardless of where in Glynn County you live. When it comes to climate change, I think we need to be more proactive. We need to make proactive assessments about the possible effects of climate change on our coast, such as rising sea levels, more intense storms, things like that. We need to assess how our coastlines can be affected. What can we do ahead of time to mitigate some of that possible damage? And how can we serve members of the community who aren't able to evacuate, even when a mandatory evacuation is deemed necessary? Just want to be proactive instead of reactive. Our environment is really diverse here and needs to be protected. and our environment drives the tourism that bolsters our local economy. So proposals that threaten our environment and tourism, like offshore drilling, I think need to be prevented. Thanks.
Thank you, Taylor. This next question, Taylor, is for you to answer first. The County Commission has created a panel to oversee the Glynn County Police Department. What are your thoughts?
So I watched the last county commission meeting, and they did actually approve that police panel. 3 men were appointed to the panel, and 3 more people were suggested by Commissioner Booker. I agree with Mr. Booker that the panel needs more diversity, and so I hope to see those 3 new names get approved at their next meeting. I believe the Glynn County Police Department does need to remain under the control of the county commissioners and not fold into the sheriff's office, as was proposed a few months ago. I also agree that the Glynn County Police Department needs more oversight. Just in the last couple of years, there have been some really troubling cases, like Caroline Smalls, Ahmaud Arbery. Both of these cases have, I think, shaken the faith of the community in our local law enforcement. And we need more oversight, but also a change in mentality and in attitude. I applaud our police officers who work for the betterment of our community. And I think our police force should be a source of comfort and protection. And our community needs to be able to put their faith in our officers.
Thank you, Taylor. Fred, the same question.
Yeah, I believe that the county police departments, the sheriff's department, all should stay as they currently exist. But there needs to be more oversight. There needs to be some priorities in how our police handle certain situations. I, for one, believe that to have a panel to study the policy and procedures is a long overdue panel. I am familiar with the 3 men that were put on this panel just last week, and I too agree with Commissioner Booker that there needed to be more diversity on that panel. So I'm glad that he's strongly recommending that they add 3 more people to that with a little less whiteness in it. And I think that they will be wise to do that, not only being able to interact with the community, but also be able to get some real feeling for what is happening in the trenches.
Thank you, Fred, for that. This next question goes to you first, Fred. Considering the scope of social economic status represented in the county, how would you address projects that will be beneficial for lower income citizens that will require the support of higher income citizens who may not see a specific project as beneficial to their area of residence?
Well, I think a lot of this was taken care of a long time ago, and it's unfortunate in the way it was taken care of. We have centered most of the housing projects and most of the lower income families live on the mainland, and we have put a lot of focus on improvements on St. Simon's with this mentality that, hey, we're paying for it, we're the ones that should get it, when in fact Glynn County Glynn Countyans need to understand, and for which I do, is that we have a responsibility to the city of Brunswick. The city of Brunswick maintains and manages a huge majority of the untaxed properties of Glynn County. Most of the schools, most of the major churches, all of the government buildings, all of these properties, all the Section 8 houses and apartments, all of these are a burden on the city. And I think that it's our responsibility to help manage those areas a little better. And it's going to take some transparency, as we've talked about before, and some better police protection as well.
Thank you, Fred. Same question, Taylor.
Gonna get a little cheesy, but one of my favorite quotes is from John F. Kennedy, and it says that a rising tide lifts all boats. I don't think you should have to convince people from a higher income to just kind of help out the lower income areas. Economists have shown that projects that benefit lower income residents end up benefiting all members of the community in the long run. Improvements raise everyone's standard of living, they increase everybody's property values, and they lead to lower crime rates. Improvements across the county instill pride in our community, and it leads to further beneficial developments. It leads to things like in the invitation of industry and new businesses to help grow our economy. And again, that in turn benefits everyone. And I think that this issue highlights how important it is to have commissioners from all corners of Glenn County. The other at-large commissioner lives on St. Simon's Island, as does the District 2 representative. So I believe that the next elected at-large commissioner should be from a district that is not on one of the islands.
Thank you, Taylor, for that answer. Thank you all for those remarks. Now we turn this over to our constituents in our audience. You will have 1 minute to answer the question from the audience. The questions will be asked, beginning with each candidate on a rotating basis. Question to start with, what are your thoughts on the 2020 splash, Taylor?
The 2020 splash, yes. Okay, so before I made the decision to run for county commissioner, SPLOST was kind of a vague idea to me. I knew it had to do with infrastructure and a 1% tax. But it's a 1% tax imposed locally to fund infrastructure projects. The tax is imposed by the commission, but I think a lot of people don't realize that it's voted on by the community, because sometimes those projects takes 4 years before they're implemented. I think SPLOST is another area, like I said before, where the commission needs to be more transparent and provide simplified material about those proposed projects. Many people have been upset by the installation of the roundabout on the East Beach Causeway, and now the second roundabout on Demery. And again, people fail to realize that these were proposed and voted and approved in 2016. So personally, as a citizen, I would like to see more focus be put on infrastructure projects around the county that are not on St. Simon's Island. I think there is a lot of infrastructure that needs to be improved all over Glenn County. When it comes to the 2020 SPLOST, I think we're in a really unique situation, obviously. I'm not sure whether it'll be supported this year due to the hit the economy's taken. I think there's infrastructure that we really need to improve, but we also need to be supporting our citizens and helping everyone get back on their feet too.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from our constituents that's online right now?
Do I get to answer that question?
Yes, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Okay. The question is, how do I feel about the SPLOST 2020? Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Specifically the SPLOST 2020, I think, is a dead issue, and primarily because our economy here in one of the higher tourism seasons was completely wiped out. We've received almost 100% down in whatever revenue we could receive this past quarter, and I think we're going to see the impact on tourism go much further than just this past quarter. So to ask the citizens of Glenn County to vote on an extra 1%, I think is a non-issue that we don't even need to have it on the ballot. But if the commission insists on having it on the ballot, I would vote no for it. And I believe there's lots of projects that need to be taken care of, particularly on the mainland and in the western parts of the county. But right now, I think that SPLOST is a dead issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is Julie Jordan, and I am looking in the chat room, and we have someone that is wondering the candidates' thoughts on dedicated pickleball courts being built.
Taylor, you want me to take that one first?
Go ahead.
I've seen some land cleared adjacent to the tennis courts off of Mallory, I believe, and I presume that's where they're going to want to put some of the courts. I think we've got. First of all, I think the last commission meeting that addressed the pickle court issue came up with a better idea, and that was less courts and try to get it within the budget that they had allotted for that particular project. I have to say, to be quite transparent, since that seems to be the operative word in this forum, that I don't know a lot about pickleball, but I'm sure I would learn a lot more if I were a county commissioner. Thank you.
I feel very similar to Fred. I would not call myself a pickleball expert. I know that there are tennis courts and other sports fields in and around Mallory Park. Honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is that if people are against pickleball courts in Mallory Park, they're more than welcome to bring them and build them in a square in downtown Brunswick, because we have a lot of green squares and we don't have a lot of sports fields that kids can use around here. So.
Okay. Our next question is, communities around the state, including some of those have a smaller full-time population, are working to create public transportation. This could be a major boon to the county. Do you believe that we should pursue a study on public transportation throughout the county? Fred, is that yours first?
I think it's my turn.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think Taylor's first on this one.
Yep. So there is a Brunswick area transportation study. It's called BATS, B-A-T-S. They actually have a meeting, I believe, next week, 29th, I think. Is that this week? Anyway, so there is a study. The last time they did the study was in 2016, and it actually showed that Brunswick can support public transportation, and that of the people that they polled, the majority were in favor of it. And so I am also in favor of public transportation. I think our county is very spread out. People work in one part of the county and live in another part. I think that it would improve the job that people can get if they have reliable public transportation that they can utilize to get to and from places, to get to stores, to get all over. So I am in favor of introducing a public transportation.
I have to agree with Taylor wholeheartedly on this. I'm without exception, we need public transportation. We've got people in the service industry traveling to St. Simons that we could alleviate a lot of traffic by them not having to drive their own cars or even worry about where they're going to park their own cars. I think also that we're looking at a big part of our county and community is has a workforce that's in the service industry or in the minimum to high or minimum to wages that are supposedly livable wages, and possibly work 2 or 3 jobs at a time. And it's hard for these people to get around. And I think that transportation is an important key to getting those people to their jobs on a timely basis, and also will help alleviate a lot of the traffic issues that our community has become quite unique to. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is, Governor Kemp is opening Georgia in the next few days, at least part of the the businesses that have been shut down. What do you think about having major tourism return to our county suddenly?
Let me take this one first, Taylor. First of all, I don't think major tourism is going to return to our area immediately. I think that the governor has some rather altruistic ideas about this disease or this virus, and I believe that we should err on the side of caution. We need more time we need to continue implementing social distancing. He said in this in his news conference today that it would be okay to open restaurants, but he doesn't think churches ought to open. Well, how convoluted is that? I'm opposed to. I am a big church goer. I love my church, and I love all the people that I attend that with, and I miss them so much. I really do. But I'm going to err on the side of caution and quite frankly say that I think the governor is very wrong in these decisions that he's made.
All right. Thank you, Fred. Taylor?
I agree with Fred. I think that Governor Kemp's decision to open these businesses back up is a mistake. I hope I'm wrong, but I would rather react with an overabundance of caution. And I know that people are antsy. I want to leave my house. I'm sick of looking at these same four walls, but there's a reason. No one is happy to be home. Well, maybe a couple people, but most people don't want to be home all the time. We want to go do these things, but it's for everyone else that we don't. And I think that people look at, our county only has 49 cases as of today, I think, and we say, oh, well, it's not coming here. And what I want people to realize is that they're low because of what we've been doing. To me, a low number of cases doesn't mean that we were wrong to stay at home. It means that we did the right thing. And to discontinue that now, I think, is a mistake. And I hope I'm wrong. Maybe people will choose to stay home. Maybe tourism won't return and it'll be fine, but I would rather react with an overabundance of caution and say we overreacted. Thanks.
Okay, it looks like we have one more question, so if anybody has a question, please type it in the chat room. But this is the last one that I have so far. Oh, we now have two. So here's this one. Glynn County is the only place I have lived where the people don't choose the commission chairman. Would you support changing that?
All right, me first.
I'm
going to be honest. I know that our commissioner is not chosen by, constituents. I didn't know that other counties do that. I guess for something that I know so little about, I would love to talk to that person or talk to constituents and find out their feelings about it. Because I don't think as a representative, you have to be an expert about everything, but you need to know when to listen and to see what the constituents want. Because it's not always what you want, it's what your constituents want. So that's what I would do.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I've traveled here recently for doctor's appointments and some other essential issues that I've had to take care of. And traveling through counties with signs on them that say, elect so-and-so for chairman of the county commission made me think about, well, wait a minute, the constituency of Glynn County doesn't elect our county chairman. And right now, I think that that issue needs to be studied. I think it would be a good idea to consider that, and I would also like to hear what the constituents say and listen to former county commissioners that have been on the commission and find out, well, did they think it was a good idea that they had complete control of electing their chairman, or should have been left up to the residents of the community? I don't think there's any danger in allowing the residents to do that. So I'm fairly I'm open as far as that question is concerned in studying it more and determining whether that's a good idea or not.
Okay. Next question is, would you support funding a Parks and Recreation master plan? The county has been operating without one for many years.
Wow, is that right? That's sad. The Parks and Recreation Department, I actually worked for the Parks and Recreation Department right out of one of the colleges that I graduated from, and for a short period of time, and we have an extraordinary Parks and Recreation staff and director. We have some great facilities throughout the county that are supportive of the athletics and parks that are used by every age group. So we're very fortunate to have that. It surprises me that Parks and Recreation does not have a long-range plan, but it doesn't surprise me that they, like everything else in our county government, does not have a long-range plan. This pandemic, we should have had a plan on hand for it. There should have been a better long-range plan as far as our infrastructure, and we look at what the JWSC is doing with that. And Parks and Recreation is no different. We're dealing with this with the police department, and I think the Parks and Recreation is no different. They need a long-range plan, very certainly.
Thank you. Thank you. Taylor?
I'm also surprised to hear that they don't have a long-range plan, only because I feel like that's really important. I think that we have a lot of really great green space. You know, I grew up in the downtown area. We have lots of squares. Some of them are beautifully decorated, like Hanover Square. Some are empty. One even has an old, the footprint for a tennis court. So I would love to see a long-range plan, not just for, you know, downtown, but for all of Glynn County, to maximize the space that we have and to provide the most opportunities we can for people to get outside and enjoy nature and exercise. I think that's really important. And I think when you have a long-term, you make the most efficient use of space and resources, as opposed to, you know, not everyone all working together towards a long-range plan and everyone just kind of doing their own thing. So I think that would be really important to implement.
Okay, we have a question for a restaurant owner at this time. Can our county commission choose to override the governor with this unwise direction? I am very involved in tourism, and opening restaurants will be a disaster. I do not think my clients want to come yet.
Is that me first?
Taylor, you want me to go first? You can go first. Doesn't matter.
I'll go. I think it's my turn. So the question is, can the commissioners override Governor Kemp's order to open?
That would be, yes, that's the question.
Okay. I mean, I do not know the answer to that specifically. I certainly know where I would go to find that out. I would guess that since Governor Kemp overrided the ruling to keep the beaches closed, that the county commissioners do not have the ability to override Kemp's order. I'm sure, you know, local business owners do have the means to stay closed if they felt socially responsible to do so, though I don't see that happening. But no, I don't believe the commissioners can override Kemp's order.
I think another part of the question, Taylor, and I'll give you an opportunity if you want to, in my time, to answer this, but Kim, yeah, certainly the county commissioners can be overridden by the governor, and um, uh, that's the dilemma that we have with dealing with people. This has been a problem with dealing with. We have the state of Georgia and we have the state of Atlanta. And what's not necessarily good for Georgia, but is good for Atlanta, is going to happen in Atlanta. And it's a terrible dilemma to be in. But it's going to be difficult for local government to fight state government. To the restaurant owner, I think I understood his question, he was saying basically he would prefer that this ruling be overridden by the county commission, because if he opens his restaurant, he doesn't think anybody's going to come, and I can't blame him for feeling that way. Restaurants live in a very sensitive environment, where they're trying to have fresh foods, they're trying to keep their place clean from the transitioning of one guest to another. It's hard enough without a pandemic to do all of that. I can't imagine how difficult it would be during that same time. And Taylor, I'm happy to forfeit any time that I have for you to answer that as well.
No, not good. I feel like I answered it.
Okay, all right.
Okay, it looks like we have time for 2 questions. This would be the second to last question. Peter Murphy has hosted quarterly town halls that have been very well attended. So many of our local elected officials do not have public forums. Would you commit to regular town halls if elected?
I think I'm first. Definitely, clearly, I would agree to town hall meetings. I think they're a good opportunity for our constituency to voice either their grievances or their ideas about certain issues that are going on. And I don't think there's any question that more public forums ought to be going on, either on a quarterly basis. Meeting twice a month by the county commissioners doesn't leave a lot of time in there to meet on a month-to-month basis with all your constituents. But I'm not opposed to having public forums with multiple commissioners in those meetings. And then if a commissioner district of a certain district wants to have one separate from that, like Peter did, and I've been to some of those, I would certainly believe that's his right to do that.
All right, Taylor, same question.
I think that those kinds of public forums are really important. As I said earlier, some people don't even know the name of their commissioner or who to go to when they have a problem. And I think it's really important that you don't have to be personally affiliated with a commissioner to give them your opinion or to tell them something that you're passionate about. I think it is really important that we are out there. I think that being a public official or a representative, someone who's elected to local office, isn't about power, it's about service. And so you should be available to people as much as possible to provide service, because that's what you're there for. You are there for the people of this county.
Okay, this is our last question. So, would you support the idea of creating community gardens both in Brunswick and St. Simons? We have the urban environment for water, growing, and landscaping. We could be growing communal food with the resources we already have.
Taylor?
Yeah, I would support that idea. They actually, on Gloucester, an orchard has been planted in one of the squares on Gloucester Street. They're too small now to grow any apples yet, or any citrus, actually. They might be citrus, not apples. But I am very excited about that. I would love to see more stuff like that. There's the Historic District Planning Assembly, who has been redoing the medians in Brunswick and I had been inquiring about whether we could plant any sort of edible food there because the medians are rather large on Union Street. But as they are medians, they didn't want people to be crossing the street because that would be more dangerous. So I think utilizing other properties like the squares we have and the other green spaces we have would be really beneficial. The more access people have to fresh food, the better.
Thank you, Taylor. Fred?
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of communal gardening. I've been kind of disappointed that there wasn't a more proactiveness about building communal and sustainable gardens on the mainland than there has been. Over here on St. Simon's, the communal gardening area is filled to its capacity every year, and they have a waiting list of people that want to get into that garden. So to suggest to open some grounds on the mainland for that purpose as well, I think is a great idea, and we need to take some serious thought in that idea. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. And at this time, we would want to give the candidates 30 seconds each to make concluding remarks. We will again go across the stage, starting on the right side. Fred?
Thank you. One of the questions that I've been asked is, why are you running for county commissioner? And I think I can sum the answer to that question up with my final response to the viewers here. And that is that Glynn County has been very good to me, my family, multiple generations on my wife's side of our family. We have enjoyed the lifestyle of our wonderful area and our wonderful community here. Glynn County's been good to me in the several businesses that I've held here, and it's a time now in my lifetime to give some of that back. I too believe, like Taylor, that good political leaders do it because it's a service. It's not a power. I have no ambitions beyond being a candidate or beyond being elected as the county commissioner at large post too. However, the degree of education that I've had and the background I've had in running multi-million-dollar operations and my ability to solve problems and work on multiple issues is something that I would look very, very forward to, and working with a county commission that hopefully will take a long-range vision of where we can go with Glynn County. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Taylor?
I'm a stickler for rules. I got 30 seconds, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm running for county.
Sorry about that.
Because I don't believe our county commission is diverse enough. You need diversity in a governing body that represents the diversity of the group that they govern, and we don't have it. It's not just diversity in terms of gender, which clearly we don't have. It's also diversity in terms of age, race, socioeconomic status, and background. And I provide that diversity.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you to all of our candidates and for their thoughtful answers this evening. Join us next Monday for our School Board District 5 Candidate Forum with Sean Brown. Please remember that the primary election is Tuesday, June 9th, and early voting begins on May 18th. Once again, thank you for your candidates for your participation. Thank you for audience for listening in, and thank you for everyone who set up this forum this evening. Have a blessed evening.